So the outstanding Jamaican and world sprinter Elaine Thompson-Hera is the latest athlete to confirm a split from the MVP track club to train independently, we are told. We've invited Director of Technique Lab. He's the national track and field coach. He's the head coach at the Excelsior High School and a former champs winner. David Riley. Well, he's not a former champs winner because he did win champs.
That's
he's a
not
champs
on the
winner.
prompter, why?
He
Why
will
are you clowning
help
here?
us through all of this. Sir David, good morning and welcome to Smile Jamaica once again. Always great to see you, sir.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's our pleasure. It's no surprise that athletes will change coaches. It happens all the time. But are you surprised that Elaine moved away from the MVP track club?
A bit surprised. However, the dynamics of athletes and professional athletes is an interesting one. You have to consider these athletes almost like a small business. I mean, they have an agent, they have a therapist, they have a manager, so many persons around them, and they have to manage all of those concerns and interests. And of course, you have a lot of persons, giving suggestions, and everybody's just really zoned in on performance and doing great, and all of that is tied to their contract. And so how they proceed and in their best judgment as what they need to do to secure their income is a very interesting space. And certainly when you have so many professional athletes in one space, it's almost like a conglomerate of businesses. And you need certain skill sets to be able to really help them and manage the whole situation. So it's not an easy task at all.
And switching, David, would be a big risk, no? Because oftentimes it will work out, but you are changing something that has worked for you, especially in this case, for so long, has taken you to the peak. The probability that you can stay there or get better. Talk to me about those odds.
Well, the athlete would have also assessed that it's a risk to stay. So it's a risk to stay versus a risk to leave, and they balance those two.
Yeah.
So what it is like in the work environment, you have people who have an issue with the boss, you have people who have an issue with other co-workers, and how those relationships play out sometimes tend to affect the decision that the person makes whether to stay or leave. And of course, sometimes if you're great with the boss, even though you don't like the other employees, you might very well stay and retire there. But it depends on what the situation is. And I'm not familiar with the situation in this case. But usually, once athletes have great relationship with their coaches, they tend to stay.
How do you think this will play out?
Well, we all hope that it will play out well. Track and field is a knowledge-based sport, and it's not so much what the athlete is capable of doing, but more so the instructions that they're given and the preparation that goes into their season. So it really depends on the expertise that's guiding the individual. Those expertise, however, aren't the personal property of any one person. And of course, strategies and what people do vary from one place to the next, and the philosophy of the coach differ from one to the other. But once it is solid in terms of the sports science, it should be fine once the individual is applying the sports science.
Okay.
Does it help that she's been there, she's done that, and she now knows what it took to get her to where she is now? Does that help whoever comes in as coach if she thinks that, all right, he might not be as good as a David Riley, but she can say, well, Coach David Riley used to make me run this and make me used to do that. Does that help?
Not really, because I'm not going to take an athlete and then take all the instructions from the athlete. The athlete would have to fall into the system that I have, and that's the same for most coaches. You trust the system that you have in place. You've been making changes to it year over year, and you've been massaging it, and you've gotten results. And you kind of tend to think that what you have work. So the athlete would come into that setting, and then they would participate in that. Now, whether you go through a process of using some of what was done before, that's up to you. What I do is that I get a history of the athlete, what works and what didn't work, because adjustments to training program can create problems for the individual. So you just kind of get a historical background so that whatever changes are made, it's not a sudden, because that's one of the things that must be maintained. There should be no sudden change in what the individual is doing. That usually is what leads to problems. So you want to get a history of what the individual is doing so that you can manage that transition into your own system.
How difficult, Coach, and I asked the coaches this question. I remember interviewing both Glenn Mills and Stephen Francis. So let's use you, Coach. And so you have a Usain Bolt and you have a Tyson Galen, and they're all, almost at the same level. How difficult is it for you? Because obviously you're coaching the two of them to win, which means you're coaching the two of them to beat each other. How difficult is that for you to say to Tyson, well, do this, and then you go to Usain and say, do that? Is that easy to do?
It's not easy to do, but the important thing about track and field is that you're preparing an individual. Even though you have a group, you're preparing the individual, so you develop a training program specific to the individual. So whatever the individual needs, so if Tyson Gay needs to practice his start and improve his start, then you work on that with him. If Bolt needs to work on his finish, you work on that. So you can actually work on the unique flaws of the individual in the context of a team, and that not be a case where you're showing favoritism to one athlete over the other athlete.
Well, that's where I want to jump in, because if I'm Usain and I see you trying to tell Tyson, say, well, you have to start like a faster. Me, I say, then the man I'll try coach the man for beat me. So how comfortable am I going to be with that?
No, but it's the same level of commitment that I have to each athlete. The commitment is to make you the best version of yourself. And you, regardless of whether you think the other person's best version of themselves is better than you, that's a personal issue. But I can't, as a coach, in any real honesty, decide to tell one athlete less stuff to make them better than the other. That would be very unprofessional. Mm-hmm. And if you can't manage that situation, then you shouldn't get yourself in there. Mm-hmm. And I've had athletes that I've coached from multiple schools, and they go to champs and beat my athletes, and I don't have any issue with that. The issue is whether the athlete has performed at their true potential, and that's the objective of the coach, to get the best out of the athlete, irrespective of what gear or jersey the athlete wears.
So when she says now she's training independently, what does that really mean?
You see the name at the bottom there? It says Riley. I don't know.
Generally, what does that mean, though? I mean,
independent might very well mean that she's not attached to a particular setup that is named, but it might also mean that she's training by herself under the guidance of somebody. I'm hoping that it's a proper setup that will allow for her to not just repeat her performance, but to move along the path that we've seen or we expect. I mean, she's on the verge of breaking a world record, the second fastest woman ever. It's not unusual for us to expect her to even try and break the world record. So I think at least we're expecting that the decision was one that would lead to her continuing along that path.
correct.
What happened if she gave you a call and said, Coach, I want you to take charge of me?
I would assist in whatever way. I mean, what we do at Technique Lab, we do help athletes to have that direct path to success, and we do a lot of testing to keep them injury-free. So we've been helping a lot of athletes, and at the highest level. So we have no problem in playing our part to make sure that they get to the best shape that they can. We've done it, and we've been doing it for a while.
As a coach, would you reach out to her?
No, I would. I don't think it's my place to do that.
Why not? Why not?
It's a very small space.
Punto final, period. Thank you, Sir David Raleigh.
Always good to see you, my
this morning.
friend.
Googly. So they call it in cricket? My
Googly.
word. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Didn't mean to put you on any spot this morning. It's all Neville's fault.
It would be funny that I read the newspaper tomorrow and says, well, Elaine's coach is now David Riley.
And I did deny it today.
Let's speak it. Let's speak it into being.
Good to see you, my friend. God bless. Stay safe.
Director of Technique Lab, David Riley, with us this morning. And we're staying on track when we have a chat, never will, with Olympian Toya Gould Topping after the break.
You know what MVP means in this case?